Welcome back to AAKP's 7th Annual Policy Summit titled National Kidney Patient Consumer Agenda, Where Are We Now? The Critical Need to Overcome Government Determinants of Health. I'm Ed Hickey, President of the American Association of Kidney Patients, and it's my honor to lead us into the next discussion topic, misalignments in federal regulatory and payment decisions and the consequences for kidney patients. How decisions made by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, impact unmet patient needs in the future of innovation. Joining us today, we have a number of passionate clinical and industry leaders who will I'll introduce briefly so we can move into their remarks. Mr. John Butler, who's President and CEO of Akebia Therapeutics, who's currently joining us remote from London. John. Mr. Chris Leibundguth, Director of Federal Government Affairs and Alliance Development for Baxter Healthcare. Ms. Erin Mistry, Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer at CorMedix. Ms. Tammy Gilon, Co-founder and CEO of Laminate Medical. And joining us again from a prior panel, Dr. Stephen Potter from Georgetown Transplant Institute, Georgetown University School of Medicine, and representative from the American Society of Transplant Surgeons. John, let's go to you first. As an industry leader who strives to develop solutions and advance current status quo care, can you share with us your thoughts on how critical it is that treatments are FDA approved and that all patients have a choice and access to them?
Ed, thanks so much for the invitation, the question, and thanks to AAKP. You all bring the patient voice to all that we do, and it's absolutely critical. I know how much work you do and your colleague Paul Conway. One of the things I know Paul's been involved in is this initiative on personalized medicine, which I think is so important, and that's where all medicine is moving, is personalized medicine, and that's one of the things that I think is so that we really have to shine a light on around dialysis care, because dialysis care only becomes efficient with this bundled environment that CMS has created if you start treating everyone the same. 360 or 180 degrees from where you're supposed to be moving these days. It's, drug development is a very capital intensive activity, meaning it takes a lot of money to develop a new drug. And we rely on investors bringing money into companies like Akebia and like the others I know, like Erin's CorMedix. And they'll invest in whatever they think they'll make money on, not necessarily, maybe, I think they want to do good, but they're about return on investment to their shareholders, et cetera. And they usually, and I oversimplify tremendously, but they really ask two questions. Is the drug going to work, and is there a market for it? They don't usually have to ask questions like, will the FDA approve it? And if the FDA approves it, will CMS actually pay for it? And, I'll tell one very quick story. I joined Akebia about a little over 11 years ago, and we were at a phase 2 stage of our product for the anemia of CKD. And we were developing the product for patients who are not yet on dialysis, where there's a tremendous need. But I came into the board and I said, well, we also need to develop this product for dialysis. And, the response I got from the board was, but who's going to pay for it? This bundle existed and there wasn't a real path to bringing new innovation in. Now, I've been working in the kidney disease area for, since 1991 when I was at Amgen. And I think there was a lot of trust there. And so they agreed that we needed to develop this for dialysis patients as well. About $500 million of investment later, we're, poised to introduce this product. And there still isn't a very clear path to really long-term innovation for the product. TDAPA was created for 2 years. Well, we all know innovation doesn't last for 2 years. When something is new and exciting and physicians want to use it and they know it will benefit patients, we have to create a long-term sustainable path to incorporate that into therapy. Not every board, not every company would make the decision to make an investment like that when it's not clear how something is going to be paid for. That's why you see so much more innovation today in oncology, in rare diseases, in neurology, and Alzheimer's disease, because there's a path to payment, as well as an FDA that's looking to bring products to market. And we've struggled with the FDA and kidney disease, as you know, as well.
Thank you, John. I've heard that story in different versions a number of times, and I just congratulate you for your persistence and success. I'd like to switch gears here and talk to Chris, have him provide his remarks on access to drugs, to choice and devices.
Yeah. So I'd like to actually build off of John's comments about the payment system and some of the issues that we have with it. Maybe I'll start by telling a story about our engagement with CMS and with how a company like ours deals with them. But I want to talk about not from a this is what they did. I want to talk about what we did and how we engaged. So about 7 years ago, Baxter wanted to bring a new dialyzer to the U.S. called HDX, expanded hemodialysis, right? And it's a superior dialyzer, has better clearance, it removes things like middle large molecules. We're really excited about it. So we set out on a pathway to try to figure out how to get it paid for, because an average dialyzer is about $6, and in order to bring it to the United States, we needed to have more than that in order to justify its existence, right? So the bundle didn't have any extra dollars in it, so we had to go out and try to figure out how to create an add-on payment. A payment that sits on top of the bundled rate. And I'm a lobbyist, and so what I went to the Capitol Hill and we got Bill introduced, started moving it along, but then we got traction with the administration. The administration said, hey, maybe we can do this administratively. And that seemed like the fastest way to do it. So we worked with them, and they eventually put in place this thing called TIPNIs. And we were really excited about it, and we put our product through TIPNIs twice, and both times it got shot down. Mainly because we didn't really know what CMS wanted to see from a clinical evidence standpoint. So we packaged together 100 studies from around the world, but it just didn't get through. And I'm convinced that part of that reason is because CMS is really, the way that they look at these payment systems is that they are not intended really to move new products into the system for patients. They're meant to control costs. That's why they were built. And we can add things like TDAPA to them. We can add things like TIPNIs to them. But we are always going to run into that reality that ultimately CMS really does not want to do that. And I want to take a quick aside here. I actually am not trying to beat up CMS. I think that the people who administer CMS understand what they're working with. They are statutorily and regulatorily abided to do this with this payment system. Going back to the first thing I said, when I first started working on TIPNIs, we had a decision to make whether or not we kept moving that bill through Congress, or whether we put all of our effort into working with the administration. We put all our effort into working with the administration, and I think that the thing to look forward to, or as we think about what we do next, is that was the wrong call on our part. That if we want to make changes to this payment system, spending a lot of time coming up with sophisticated arguments why they're doing the math wrong on the payment system, or why the dynamics of the payment system, and putting that into a comment letter and saying that in, I don't think that's going to change anything. I don't think CMS is going to take all that information and say, oh, this argument is now like light bulb, and we're going to change everything. I think the only way to do it is to go to Congress and and say, this payment system, it doesn't work for us anymore. What's the end result of Theranova? And Theranova is on market in the United States, by the way. It's just doesn't have a lot of uptake because there's no reimbursement next to it. But who does that impact? What's the end result of all of this political and regulatory machinations? Is that patients don't get new things. The standard of care, which I think is good. I think clinics and nephrologists do an excellent job of caring for patients, but they don't have these new things that are coming down the pike. Companies like mine, like John's, we want to innovate. We want to bring new things to the market, but unless we can figure this out, it's just this really, it's like banging your head against the wall, right? And I do think that ultimately, like, we can talk about this, and what I just said, everyone says, you go to any conference, this is like the common refrain. I think that at some point we need to stop and think about, like, how do we approach this as a community tactically, right? What's the right tactic? And I think the right tactic is to go to Congress with changes to the payment system, wholesale or small, whatever we think that the right size is, or what people can get behind, and then move that through Congress, because that's the only way that CMS is then going to have the authority to say, yes, we love your dialyzer, or yes, we love your drug, let's pay for it in a way that gets it into the hands of patients, right? I think that the people who administer CMS would love for that to be the case. Their hands are on some way tied because of the way these things were constructed, over the course of many years. So those are kind of my insights, and I'm happy to.
Appreciate it, Chris. That's great. Next, we're going to turn to Erin Mistry, who is our good friend and ally.
So I think just going back to the original question, and I, empathize obviously with the other two speakers here. The Center for Medicaid and Medicare, CMS, plays a critical role in shaping and implementing policies that facilitate the introduction of innovative products for our patient population. And certainly the folks listening in here have a strong voice. Over the past few years, I will say the agency has adopted a more favorable perspective, which has led to meaningful changes in payment structures and program initiatives. What happened with TDAPA about a year ago has definitely helped us, particularly, have more sustained access to care, which has enabled our stakeholders, like the dialysis organizations, to then adopt and utilize the product because they're seeing a more long-term value of these new products. The hope is to continue to see that evolution of the programs, further enhancing that landscape. But I'll give you a great story of how different agencies across the government work together, although they're separate, but can have impact on each other. They're all actively working on initiatives aimed at improving health outcomes, reducing overall cost of care, promoting health equity, lowering infection rates, ensuring patient safety. So that's a common thread. Our product at CorMedix is DefenCath. It's a prevention for bloodstream infections. It touches on all of those government agencies. And those objectives that are within the HHS, Health and Human Services, CMS, the White House, the CDC, all align with our mission. And so if you kind of go backwards a little bit with DefenCath, we received designation with FDA as a qualified infectious disease product. It's a QIDP status product, and also a new molecular entity. So it's a combination of those two, grants us 10 years of post-marketing exclusivity. Those regulatory approvals then positioned us to enhance reimbursement opportunities, which is payment, right, for the product, positively across 3 different settings of care. So we touched the inpatient market with an NTAP, we touched the outpatient market with dialysis organizations with a TDAPA add-on payment, and we touched vascular access centers with a pass-through payment. And all of that stems from how the FDA regulated the drug, which enabled us better reimbursement pathways with CMS. With those frameworks, over the past year, we've successfully secured longer-term sustainable reimbursement, which is leading to the increased use of the product. And then I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to showcase that, the overall healthcare cost can be reduced. So for our patient population, the United States spends $3.4 billion on bloodstream infections associated with hemodialysis patients on catheters. We're involved with a real-world evidence study that we're engaging, that soon to be started, and that we are hoping to show a longer-term benefit, not only continuity of care across settings, but reduction in overall healthcare costs and a long-term benefit to society with a drug like this. So if you take into consideration the pivotal role of CMS, it's essential to take all of these factors into account when determining access for new and innovative products. Any product that comes to market in any therapeutic category now has to show ability to generate that return on investment once they're on the market outside of just a clinical trial. So we're looking for, that longer-term societal impact. We're looking forward to the new administration, who we believe will be looking at the root causes of diseases, and we're hopeful that prevention is going to be a central part of their strategy. So I was just trying to tie in our story with various government agencies and how they can work together. There's obviously always room for improvement that we're continuing to do, but what we're trying to make sure of is that there's consistency across settings of care, and that there's also policies in place that support innovation, not hinder it.
Appreciate it, Erin. Thank you. Our next speaker is focused on vascular access, and will speak on the importance of ensuring that unique, novel innovations in surgical procedures are properly recognized by CMS for adequate coding and reimbursement to ensure individuals facing dialysis have option to all vascular access options. Tammy, I turn it over to you. Another success story, by the way.
Thank you. So thank you for the AAKP for giving us the opportunity to share our experience. My experience has been resonating a lot with what we've heard here from the other participants, but being a small startup company, we actually had to overcome different struggles and hurdles in the past decade with FDA and CMS. So after investing into clinical trials and collecting data for the past 12 years, we've obtained our FDA approval with a lot of support from the AAKP as well last year. And unfortunately, there is not enough sync between FDA and CMS when penetrating the market and starting commercializing a new product after, again, 12 years of development and clinical studies. So for a product like ours with a breakthrough designation from FDA, we had to wait more than a year in order to start work with CMS and get the right framework for payment and coding. So we wish that there would be better mechanisms to have CMS and FDA collaborate on these kind of initiatives. Another experience that we had is the different alternatives that new products like ours have in terms of coding and payment. One alternative is if you're a device that is being added to an existing procedure. For us, it's the AV fistula creation. In this case, you can get a TPT, a transitional pass-through payment. The other alternative is a new tech APC, and this is only valid for new technologies that are actually changing the procedure. We are not touching the procedure that has been the same in the past 60 years, which means that the TPT is the right pathway for us. However, TPT lasts for 3 years, and the CMS guidance is lacking of a clear guidance on how to make sure that we transition smoothly when the TPT sunsets in 3 years. So this is something that we've been trying again and again with reaching out to CMS and getting answers, and unfortunately, the guidance is not clear enough. So these are the kind of things that I think that we as an industry, together with patient societies and all the relevant stakeholders, can work together and help these authorities to help us bring innovation for patients. It's not trivial and straightforward for small companies to have delays into market commercialization of 1 or 2 years after spending years in clinical studies. And I'm hoping that more and more technologies can get this very much needed support in order to enter the market and help patients.
Thank you very much, Tammy. And then our final panelist is Dr. Stephen Potter, and he'll be addressing issues of tremendous concern related to CMS, and a perfect segue from Tammy's comments, and contractor disruptions in transplant patient health surveillance and the guidance CMS provides, and timely access to diagnostics. Let me just ask you a quick question, Steve. In the context of this panel discussion on CMS, you, ASTS, AST, AAKP, have been united in our 18-month efforts to restore Medicare transplant patient access to molecular blood test use and health surveillance for transplant recipients. Can you provide us with an update on where CMS is today on this issue, what the negative impacts have been on patients, and what the kidney community needs to see from CMS before we can say this issue is resolved for the transplant community.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks for having me. So let's just kind of set the stage for what the problem is and what the unmet need is, so that I can provide a sensible answer, right? So, we've talked a lot during these sessions about the importance of getting more people transplanted, but we haven't talked about what happens after they get transplanted. And we've gotten really good in transplantation at getting people through the operation, and we've done a dramatically better job over the last few decades of improving short-term organ transplant health and patient life. But we have not made the significant strides in long-term outcomes that we would like to make. And that brings us to one of the unmet needs, which is the way we do surveillance for kidney recipients up until a couple years ago hadn't really changed in 3 decades. We monitor serum creatinine, we look for protein in the urine, we get an ultrasound of the kidney, we do a tissue biopsy, which is invasive and expensive. So thanks to the innovators like the people on the stage here with me, who I'm humbled to be in their presence, because they're the ones driving all these improvements. But thanks to these innovations, there was the advent of molecular testing. And the most important of those is cell-free DNA. We can look at the donor-derived cell-free DNA from a simple peripheral blood sample and tell you if there's evidence of allograft injury or rejection. Critical breakthrough. And so this test became available. There was good peer-reviewed literature evidence to support its use, and it became widely adopted. And then the medical advisory contractors that work for CMS decided to impair patient access to that test. And they did so in the face of prior coverage determinations that said that this test was totally fine and good to go. They did it in spite of widespread support by transplant providers, adoption by patients, and a lot of data accumulating on an ongoing basis in the literature that said this is a better way to do things and better for patients. And so we spent a long time working with CMS to try to get that restriction to patient care changed. And I would say that I'm cautiously optimistic at this point. And I'm not here to be negative towards CMS, because I think as some of the more eloquent speakers than I have pointed out, CMS is really a rules-bound organization. What we found at CMS was a bunch of brilliant people doing the very best they could. And so we were humbled to be a part of the conversation with them, and happy to move forward and make progress. But I think the third-party contractors that CMS relied on seriously overstepped. And it's hard to see how they would have done that if it wasn't just a simple goal of limiting the costs that were paid by CMS for these tests, right? Because they're very popular. So at this point, we're cautiously optimistic that coverage has been restored, and we have 2 big red flags we have to talk to you about. One is there's a new LCD, a new local coverage determination on the horizon. So we have yet to see what exactly that's going to have in it. And 2, until testing volumes rebound from where they were before access was impaired, then we can't really say that patients are okay. Because this is a test that patients rely on to not end up going back on dialysis or dying. So it's very important for them, as you can understand. And it's therefore very important for the people like myself who take care of these patients. And so we have not seen a rebound in testing volumes, because when the medical advisory contractor limited access, test volumes went down by half nationwide immediately. And even though we've made incremental improvements in access again, they've not rebounded. And so we need to work to get the word out and get those testing volumes back up.
Just to follow up, what can we do to help? I mean, does CMS make an announcement that they should be back, a clear announcement that these are approved and will be paid for through the doctor community, the patient community? What is it? What steps can we take?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to have a holistic approach, right? So the American Society of Transplant Surgeons has been very vocal on this and very specific. AAKP has led beautifully on this, but we need to continue to keep the pedal to the floor, keep the pressure on. And we have to, be constructive with CMS, because they really have met us halfway. They've really worked hard on this, and I really applaud them.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to all our panelists for your presentations. It's very helpful, and we appreciate your participation and also your dedication to advancing kidney patient care.